WSOC TV, Charlotte. Bill Walker. Meg McDonald. AMS meteorologist Ray Boylan. And Harold Johnson with sports. This is the Eyewitness News 6 o'clock report.
2 days after the tornadoes and the slow process of putting lives back together continues. You're watching live pictures now from Cleveland County. There are scenes like this, scenes of destruction in Lincoln County, Catawba, Union, and in Durham and Spartanburg, South Carolina. $28 million in damage in all, over 100 people injured, and hundreds of homes destroyed. Good evening. The tornadoes are gone, of course, but the terror of Friday and Saturday lives on tonight. And today, the victims are turning to friends, churches, and the government for help.
South Carolina Governor Carol Campbell declared a state of emergency in Spartanburg and Cherokee counties today. And in North Carolina, the federal government moved in to see if it should offer money.
We have several reports on the tornadoes tonight with Channel 9's Jeff Sonier in Chopper 9 over Cleveland County.
Well, Bill, we're flying over where Highway 10 and Highway 18 more or less come together. If you look down below, you see Cleveland County's version of a Charlotte-style traffic jam. Those are mostly rubberneckers, people who are coming out to take a look at the kind of destruction that a tornado can do, roughly tracing the path of the tornado itself. Today, we also traced the path in Chopper 9 and talked to some people about the cost of putting their lives back together. In many cases, the cost is staggering.
It'd just be an educated guess. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000.
In this case, the house itself is still standing, and there's insurance to pay for the repairs.
Basically, this house, about 38 feet over, the whole entire roof structure's got to come off of it. And the storm pulled the rafters up. It pulled this back wall in here with it. And of course, all this brick wall and everything's got to get down here. Got a lot of damage.
But what if the house is destroyed and there is no insurance? Well, that's why declaring a disaster area is so important to so many tornado victims.
I would say the federal assistance would come into play in the event that a person didn't have adequate insurance.
Flying in on a U.S. Army chopper, the disaster investigators could see the wide path of tornado destruction. These visits to each victim's home will determine how much help Washington can be.
So what you're saying is the house was valued at what, $50,000? 53. Okay. And it's fully insured, right? Okay.
If the president would declare a disaster area, that would enable all the federal agencies that have disaster assistance available to come in.
In the meantime, the Red Cross here in Cooksville is all some of these families have.
We can help them with their immediate emergency needs today, like for food, clothing.
Now, in a few moments, we'll tell you how you can help the Red Cross help the tornado victims. Once again, we're live from Chopper 9 looking down along Highway 10 and Highway 18. You see some of the destruction, places where the tornado was very selective, tracing the road, knocking off a house on one side of the road, leaving the house across the street. You can see trees standing on either side, but right down the middle, a path of trees just snapped over like toothpicks in many cases. Now, again, in the next couple of days, the federal investigators will determine whether or not this particular area qualifies as a federal disaster area. And while it's not that important, perhaps, for the folks that have insurance, it is very important for the folks who don't have insurance and who lost so much of everything. In those cases, without the disaster assistance that Washington can provide, there's not much those folks that can do without the help of charities like the Red Cross. Bill, Mag?
And those applications can be hurried up, I guess, in an emergency situation.
Well, even in the best of cases, it takes several days, usually at least a week before the declaration comes in. Again, those investigators just landed today and saw many homes today. But in the meantime, the Red Cross is bracing for folks needing some help. They say they expect at least 120 families to come calling. That's 120 homes that were either damaged badly or completely demolished by the storm on Friday and Saturday.
Jeff, is that traffic creating a lot of problems over there?
Well, it's creating problems getting from point A to point B. Obviously, there's not a whole lot out here, but and it's really hard to believe that this many cars can be within driving distance of the tornado distance. It really looks something like a Highway 51 during a rush hour, and the only reason those cars are down there is it's folks that are trying to get their own first-hand glimpse of the storm damage.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Of course, the story of a tornado goes far beyond the numbers of dollars lost, of houses ruined and cars wrecked. The real story now belongs to the people who owned those cars and houses, the people whose dollars will have to be spent to pay for it all, the people who are coping with tragedy. Channel 9's Jim Bradley has their story.
I was raised in it. My daddy built it. And that's the only new house that we'd ever lived in.
For more than half a century, Blaine and ALTA LEONHARDT lived right here until Friday night.
See that door that's shut right yonder?
Yeah.
And the closet was back that way?
That's where you were?
That's where we were. And see, it fell in all around us.
That closet, the only place inside left intact, saved their lives. But all around them was nature's violent ruin. They lived, but a part of them is gone now, a part they can hardly explain.
You can hear people try to explain being in a tornado, but there's no way to explain it, I don't think. You just can't tell nobody the feelings that you have.
It's sickening. It just makes you sick to look at it.
There was reason to smile, though.
Somebody heard her whining.
This morning, they found their dog. She'd been trapped 3 days underneath the house. Susie's okay now, relaxing a half-mile away at LEONHARDT's son's house. That's where they'll stay, too, for a while. If there's not much of a house left here anymore, well, the LEONHARDTs are still hoping there can be a home. Their church, in fact, has come forward and said they'll build them a new one for nothing on the very same spot that this one went up 65 years ago.
Friday's my birthday, and I'll be 74.
And starting over.
Starting over.
Jim Bradley, Channel 9, Eyewitness News, Lincoln County.
Well, across both Carolinas, today was a day to put the pieces back together. And for a lot of people, that meant getting the lights back on. In the Winston-Salem area, Duke Power crews have restored power now to 20,000 homes, but 20,000 more could still be without power until the middle of the week. In Durham, a calm, sunny day today did not tell the story of Friday's winds, clocked at 157 miles an hour in Durham. The cleanup continues there with hopes that the federal government may step in to help. In South Carolina, more devastation and a declaration today from Governor Campbell. A state of emergency now exists in Spartanburg and Cherokee counties, and that does clear the way for direct help from state agencies.
And when those black clouds swirl into a funnel that dips to the ground, it is certainly time to take cover. But where should you? A building can offer some protection, but a tornado, as we've seen, can leave it in shambles. Well, now a scientist at Clemson University says it does not have to be that way, and our science reporter Ted McGuire is here to tell us how buildings could be made safer.
I guess the thing we should start off with by saying is we aren't suggesting at all that you shouldn't take shelter inside a building. We've seen study after study that says you're much safer there than anywhere else. But we've all seen the pictures, particularly those of the buildings that have been destroyed over this past weekend, hit by tornadoes, and it doesn't make us feel very secure. A tornado is one of nature's most destructive spectacles. Sometimes it seems as if we're powerless to do anything in the face of such an awesome force, which destroys everything in its path. In 1984, a tornado virtually flattened this shopping center in Bennettsville, South Carolina. A scientist at Clemson wondered why the damage was so extensive.
When the roof was stripped off, then the rather poor framing system supporting the roof would have become unstable, and then the frame would have overbalanced and fallen down, bringing the air conditioning system with it.
Peter Sparks built a tiny replica of the shopping center inside a special wind tunnel at Clemson. Sparks wanted to study how buildings react to the force of a tornado.
Generally, as the wind blows over the building, there will be suction on the sides, suction on the roof, suction on the back wall, and pressure on the front wall.
Pressure also builds up inside the building, and with so much pressure inside and out, the building collapses. But Sparks says it doesn't have to be this way. He says houses and other buildings could be constructed to reduce the damage from tornadoes. Simply changing the way nails are hammered into roofs could make them stronger. Sparks says concrete block walls in shopping centers need to be reinforced. He says a big problem is outdated building codes.
You'll find that the walls are not capable of carrying the loads which the building codes say they should carry. that wouldn't matter so much if they were simply keeping the rain out. But when they're an integral part of the structural system, then I think that's rather dangerous.
The key now, according to Sparks, is the roof. Once it's gone, the walls simply fall in. Sparks says most roofs wouldn't even withstand 60 to 80 mile-per-hour winds, much less the 500 or so mile-per-hour winds found in some tornadoes. That's because most roofs are attached with nails, straight in, and it goes about like this. The force of the tornado, and here's we can just look at the nail. Generally speaking, they go in at an angle. Force of the tornado can just lift the roof and the nail straight off. Sparks says that, according to him, the roof should be attached with nails hammered in straight at an angle. No angle at all, 90 degrees. This would make the bond a lot stronger. The force of the tornado, of course, they would not be able to pull that out as easily. Sparks says the additional cost of that particular method of putting it in, it's called a hurricane anchor, adds about $200.
This is a special nail, then?
It's actually the same nail bond. It's simply a metal sheathing that they put on there. It's a hurricane anchor, according to them.
Is it a lot slower, Ted, in construction?
Not at all, really. It's just basically they have to add one additional thing. And right now it's being used in some coastal sections. Yeah. It's required by code, but not all. And it's not required in many inland areas either.
Expensive?
No, about $200.
To the whole cost of the house?
Whole cost of the house.
Yeah, that doesn't seem much.
Thank you, Ted.
WSOC TV, Charlotte. Bill Walker, Meg McDonald, David Haynes with tonight's Live Eye cover story. AMS meteorologist Ray Boylan, Harold Johnson with sports. This is Eyewitness News Tonight.
For people who saw the tornadoes that ripped through the Carolinas last Friday, this is a sight they won't soon forget. Now, these pictures of one of the tornadoes were shot by an amateur photographer in Durham. While he was shooting, the tornado was destroying buildings on the ground. But this scene may be an even more vivid memory. Tornado victims looking through the rubble of their homes, trying to decide how to rebuild their lives. It will not be an easy process.
And that's something that the people of McColl, South Carolina know all too well. They had a tornado in 1984, and David's here now with their story. In cover story.
Meg, we went to McColl because we thought that the people who have gone through a tornado would have something to say to people who are just beginning to deal with the tragic loss. What we found was a friendly town with people who had something to say to all of us. It's a picture of an American small town. Blue skies, trim lawns, freshly painted homes. Lee Street in McColl is a vision of serenity. But it wasn't always that way. March 28, 1984 is etched into the memory of this town like a child's first bad dream. McColl buried 6 of its residents after the tornadoes. A memorial to those deaths is at City Hall. 60 homes in this small town were destroyed. The people here know exactly how it feels to go through a tornado. Some of what they have to say to this year's tornado victims isn't pleasant.
From now on until the day they die, more than likely, every time you have a bad windstorm or a raining storm, you're going to be terrified. I know I am.
But much of their talk 5 years after the devastation is inspiring. Nelson Drigger's house and everything in it was lost in the twister. 6 months later, he had a new home.
In 6 months, they can look back on it and everything will look a lot different. Everything will come together. It'll seem like a long, hard road, and surely it is. But it's not an impossible trip.
The 1984 tornado victims rebuilt with the help of private insurance, volunteer labor, and the federal government. Dealing with the government, they say, was the toughest.
There was a lot of paperwork you had to go through. I know a lot of families that sit in trailers, that was furnished. They sit in the trailers for, I'd say, 6 months to maybe some of them a year.
The message from McColl is one of hope, one of rebuilding. 5 years after the destruction, a first-time visitor would have a tough time finding the scars of the storm. And if you talk with the people of McColl, those scars are even tougher to find.
Well, it ain't no time to despair. You just got to buckle down, start over. I mean, the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take. You just got to get in there and go and rebuild and start your life over.
And McColl residents also say that the storm that hit their town was so powerful, so overwhelming, that they feel lucky to have escaped its fury with their lives. Possessions, they say, can be replaced. Lives cannot.